Okay, this is the easiest way to run a sub-3-hour marathon. If you're stuck anywhere between 3:01 and onwards, or you've gone from 3:12 to 3:09, then 3:07, only to slide back to 3:10, 3:12, and you think you're going backwards, you probably got to the point where you think that sub-3 hours just isn't on the cards for you. But it absolutely is. In this video, I'm going to show you how to tweak your training, your pacing, and your mindset so that the breakthrough doesn't just happen. All of a sudden, you know you're capable of going way faster. I'm Lee Grantham, a coach and a professional ultra runner who went from running a marathon in 4 hours and 25 minutes to running a marathon in 2 hours and 21 minutes. And it took me no time at all. It took me less than 2 years to go from 4 hours and 25 to 2 hours and 37. And then it started to get tough. And it took me 5 years to take my personal best from 2 hours and 37 minutes to 2 hours and 21 minutes. But once I started to work with the right people and start to do the right things well, all of a sudden my performance exploded. And that's when I got my marathon to 2 hours and 21 and my 100K time, which was infinitely more important to me, to 6 hours and 42 minutes. It took me 2 years to take 2 hours off my marathon, and then 5 years to take 10% of that time. If you want to save yourself years of wasted energy or doing things slightly incorrectly or just outright wrong, and do the right things well, then get in contact by booking a call in the description. I'm going to give you 5 key sessions that are going to be the cornerstone to your marathon transformation. But first of all, let's get 2 things right. Firstly, we've got to check our starting point. If you're trying to run the entire marathon in 3 hours, then we're aiming for 4:15 per kilometer or 6:52 per mile. All we're gonna do is we're gonna completely forget the other equivalent times for 10K, half marathon, marathon, and we're gonna solely focus on becoming the fastest 5K runner that we possibly can. So forget everything else and let's just focus on that top line. 5K, we're aiming for 18:45, so that's 3:45 per kilometer or 6:02 per mile. That's all that counts for now. So what's the starting point? How long can we currently hold 3:45 pace or 6 minutes and 2 seconds per mile? If you can do that currently for a kilometer, fantastic. That's the starting point and that's what we're building on. But we want to be doing these sessions in control. We want them to be in our capability to a point where you finish in the session, you feel like you could do another 1 or 2 reps. And if we understand that now, that it's the consistency over the weeks and months that is gonna lead you to this completely different runner, then it's just gonna save you so much back steps or so much downtime. We can just continue to move up in progress. Session number 1, 12 times 500 meters with 60 seconds rest in between. Now, in an ideal world, what we're doing there is 12 times 500 meters at 3:45 per kilometer or 6:02 per mile. But remember, it's way more important to have those 12 reps within your control, within your capability. Don't chase those times. And so if it's not in your control to run at that pace, then run at the pace where you can control the entire session and feel like you could do 1 or 2 more reps at the end. Session 2. 6 times 800 meters with 60 seconds rest in between. Again, 3:45 or 6:02 per mile. So we're working with slightly more volume, 6,400 meters. We're splitting it up into just 6 chunks of 800 meters. So we're moving over the ground for longer. And again, we're getting incredibly comfortable and efficient moving over the ground at our intended marathon pace. But again, we've got to be in control. So if you think in that situation, 6 times 800 meters, you can go out there and you can hold, say, 4 minutes per kilometer. That is where you're at right now. And very quickly, if you consistently do these sessions on a weekly basis, that 3:45 pace will come to you. Session 3, 6 times a kilometer with just 60 seconds rest in between. We'll keep that 60-second rest as a constant so you can monitor your progress over the weeks. And also it keeps the heart rate elevated. So you're at the right effort level, and it's also helping you control or pace the session. Because if you know that you've got another rep in just 60 seconds, you're not going to overdo it. And again, no matter what your starting point, if you can hit these at 3:45 per kilometer or 6 minutes per mile, great. If you need to come at this a little bit slower, again, that 60 seconds rest is gonna help you pace the session. Now, of course, you can make an interval session. You can make 6 times a kilometer as hard or as easy as you want. If we're laying it out like that, 6 times a kilometer with 60 seconds rest in between, we can only go so fast because all of a sudden 60 seconds is over, we've got to go again. And therefore, if we go out too hot, you're gonna know about it come the 3rd or 4th rep. Session number 4, 24 times 250 meters with 60 seconds rest in between. Now, this is not an easy session to do. It might look easy because they're only short reps, but with 24 of them, what you will realize is the perceived effort in the second half, much harder. Exactly the same with the 6 times a kilometer. The perceived effort of rep 6 is probably gonna be harder than rep 1 if we've paced the session correctly. And the way I like to look at this, 24 times 250 meters, is a bit like the marathon. We've got quarters, we've got 2 halves, we've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so there's gonna be a point where you feel, oh, 12 reps, I'm halfway through, I'm over the hump, but I've used a lot of energy, and so I need to focus. And then there's gonna be a point when you need to really dig in. And this is also helping us pace the marathon or any race that we're aiming for. Now, for the pacing for these reps, 250 meter reps, I want you to aim at being quicker than marathon pace, intended marathon pace, but still the whole session is under your control. It's in your capability. And so what that might look like is you're setting off at 335 or 330 per kilometer because they're only short reps. And then maybe you need to bring it back, or you can push on depending on how you're feeling. But again, like the marathon, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so get ready for this to get progressively slightly harder. And if you're ready for that, just like you're visualizing that final third or that final 10K or 6 miles of the marathon, you're ready for it, you're mentally prepared. But what we're doing there is 6 kilometers worth of volume at faster than intended marathon pace. So we're building not just that faster running body, we're also building confidence that we can do reps, we can do intervals at quicker than intended marathon pace. And that's gonna make not just the marathon feel easier, but it's also gonna make future interval sessions feel easier. And if you think about the extremes, and this is just an example, but if we can do a 250 meter rep and 24 times 250 meters at 3 minutes per kilometer, just an example, then of course, once we go back and do 6 times a kilometer, we're not going to be running them at 3:45. So we're playing with intended marathon pace. We're making sure that it's all manageable. We're not going out of control, and we're consistently executing these sessions on a weekly basis, so we're getting better at them. And with that usually comes an appreciation for that warm-up and making sure the body is primed, ready to hit the interval session, because you know that if you consistently hit these interval sessions, the rest of your training is going to be affected for the positive, and race day is going to be taken care of. Session number 5. Now we're starting to get to a point with these rep lengths where it's giving us a really good indication of what we're capable of when we race that 5K. We're aiming to be as comfortable as possible. It's going to be an effort, but we're aiming to be as comfortable as possible moving over the ground 3:45 per kilometer or 6:02 per mile. And that's going to indicate very strongly that we're on the right path. We've built that side of our game so that we can progress onwards and really attack the marathon. So this session, 3 times 2 kilometers, again with 60 seconds rest in between, we're going to feel like the rep lengths are long, but there's only 3 of them. And you will feel at this point, you will see at this point, compared to others or comparing to your past self, where do you feel strong and where do you need development? Where do you need help? It may be that the 24 times 250 meters, you felt great, you were flying, you were much faster than you thought you were going to be, and you felt like you could do another 5. You might get to this session and all of a sudden you're able to hold that pace to run these in 7 minutes and 30 seconds, each 2 kilometer rep, and 3 of them all within your capability. But when you did the 24 times 250 meters, you might have just been able to hold pace because it kind of felt like stop and start, and you were never really comfortable or in the groove. So already we're starting to, over the weeks, with that consistency, we're starting to build up a level of data that we can look at and we can improve up on. Now, the bonus session, number 6, big session. But if you can do this, and it makes sense, think about it. 2 times 3 kilometers with just 60 seconds rest in between. 60 seconds is gonna go like that because the rep length is long. We're trying to hold that 5K pace. You're gonna do 6 kilometers of volume, so it's more than the race itself. It's a big session, but we're not really building a 5K runner. We're building somebody who can run 5K in the equivalent time that we can then go on and hit the other times for the 10K, the half marathon, and then on to the marathon. So this type of session, although big and probably overkill for a 5K runner, it's a great indication that we're at a strong enough level to execute the 5K, yes, in the time that we want, but also 2 times 3 kilometers, it's giving you as much data as the 5K race itself as to what you're capable for the marathon. So I'd be at a point where if I can do 3 kilometers and 2 reps of them with just 60 seconds in between, and I can hold 3:45 pace or 6:02 per mile, I already am confident at moving up in distances and executing. Now again, it's about setting yourself up for success here. So yes, the warm up, get that on point. If you've got that on point, it's 12 to 15 minutes. If it needs to take a little bit longer, just about priming yourself, because you know this interval session is going to push you forward the most. You're going to get the most improvement from this session, and you're going to quickly learn that it's the consistency over the weeks and months that's going to make us into a much faster runner. But we're also thinking about the foundation. Is our sleep in check? Is the stress reduced enough? Is our diet on check? Are we overweight? Are we at race weight, or are we carrying extra? If you look at all the areas that you can improve, and there are many, the fact that so many runners are at 3:09, 3:10 for the marathon, and they've tried for so long training in a certain way to get to where they've got to, that they don't believe sub-3 is possible, is absolutely ridiculous if you think about it. We want to run a marathon in 180 minutes or less. You can do it in 190 minutes, but absolutely no way is that extra 10 minutes crossable. And if you think you've looked under absolutely every stone that you possibly can, and you've maximized for the last 3, 5, 10, 20 years, you've maximized every area that you possibly can, and you cannot find another 5 or 6% to get your dream time, then hats off to you. I completely respect you. But I will argue with you, and I think you're wrong. When I was at 2 hours and 37 minutes for the marathon, I thought I was towards the limit. I thought I was towards my potential. And I managed to find more than 10% and go faster and get to that 2 hours and 21. And once you get to those points and you've opened those doors, you realize there's just a whole different way of doing things. There's a much smarter way to train. And if you want that smarter way to train without fumbling around like I did for 5 years, then book a call by clicking the link in the description. But if you just want more free advice on how to get that sub-3, click on any one of these videos here.